Welcome to Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon HSP. I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive, a Reiki master practitioner, and an animal communication teacher for pets and their people. And for our purposes today, I'm also your friendly neighborhood host for the Let's Talk to Animals podcast. And here at Let's Talk to Animals, we are in season 5. And we've covered a lot of ground. I've interviewed intuitives and healers and holistic practitioners from all over the world. But the number one fundamental goal remains unchanged. We aim to demystify, to de-woo all things interspecies intuition. When you get a vibe from your pet, is that the real deal, or are you making it up in your head? Who can do animal communication? What are some of the different pathways it can lead you down? And in fact, on that note, today, I have Jane Marie from Asheville, North Carolina, one of the prettiest places on the planet, in my opinion. And she is a highly sensitive person, a highly sensitive coach. And we're unpacking the possibility that Jane Marie is also a highly sensitive pet parent. So we're going to have a chat today about what is high sensitivity. What does that even mean? And if you're listening to this and you're kind of something in your gut or something in your heart or something even in your brain is going, ooh, that sounds interesting to me, it may just be that you're going to find yourself in today's podcast episode. So keep listening. And as you listen, if you start to get some spidey sense, if you will, some vibes that maybe we are describing some traits you're seeing in your own companion animals, your pets, definitely keep listening. We're going to unpack all of that today. So Jane Marie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so good to connect with a fellow highly sensitive.
Yes, I feel the same. It is like a sense of relief, really, to just know that that is a shared quality that we both have.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who are tuning in today, maybe they're even finding Let's Talk to Animals for the first time. They're not sure why we're talking about highly sensitive. So let's just take a moment and unpack that. And if you could just share a little bit about how you discovered that you were highly sensitive, what that term means for you in your life, and just share a little bit about your story so our listeners can get to know you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that invitation. So, highly sensitive, to describe myself, is different from that story or that rhetoric heard as a child of being too sensitive. When I discovered the term highly sensitive person, I identified with it, but I didn't actually dive into all of Elaine Aron's research or anything else out there. And then once I did, what it really meant for me is an understanding of why I'm so interested in subtle energies, why I'm so interested in the chakras, why so many choices that I've made in my life are the way they are. It allowed me to step outside and around and peer in at who I am in a different way that has been really empowering and really helpful.
So for those of you, you mentioned Dr. Elaine Aron, and for those of you who are not familiar, could you just share a little bit about her work, kind of maybe give some folks some direction if they want to research that a little more?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So, Dr. Elaine Aron would be in the world of high sensitivity for people and honestly opening the door for animals as well, is the main researcher. She's the lead researcher in discovering that it's a trait that is not only found in humans, but also in over 100 different animal species. And of course, it comes down to something that science can magnify and equate and qualify to make that a publicly acceptable and known thing, which we're calling a trait here. But of course, on a personal level, it's our lived experience. But on the science side, when you look at the insula, which is in the center of the brain, it's more active for highly sensitives than it is for non highly sensitives. And so she really spearheaded this research and has paved the way. And everyone calls it like the book, the
Mhm.
highly sensitive person. So if you are curious, look up Dr. Elaine Aron and start with the highly sensitive person, her first book that she wrote about it. And on her website are lots of resources, blogs, and different directions that you could dive down a rabbit hole and find yourself in. But it comes down to what is more commonly accessible today because we can't all end up in an MRI machine to see what our
Right.
brains are doing.
Right. Right.
To read through the acronym DOES. So D is the depth of processing, O is overstimulation, E is emotional reactivity and or empathy, and S is sensitivity to subtleties. And like when you're not in the scientific culture, this culture of science and research, emotional reactivity might sound a little jostling and or overstimulation, but it's pointing to a nervous system.
Mm.
And it really comes down to how you're taking care of your nervous system that you may reach overstimulation. Uh, you pass that threshold sooner than a non-highly sensitive person. And the emotional reactivity is as much as the depth of pain as it is the high uplifting aspects and euphoria of beauty and light. So it's, it has that dichotomy in it. But that would be a good little overview about it, I think.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I remember finding, of course, the wonderful Google algorithm and how it'll just pop things out at you that you're like, wow, I didn't know I was looking for that. And I remember coming across her work, and the first book I encountered was The Highly Sensitive Person in Love. And that was when I was going through a particularly tumultuous time in my long-term relationship that has since dissolved. Talk about opposites attract. And I remember finding my way from the book over to her website and taking the test and scoring quite high on all the different attributes and
Yeah.
realizing, wow, it's like that Lady Gaga song, Born This Way.
Yes. Yes.
And it
Yeah.
was very affirming and kind of relieving, for lack of a better word. Like, oh, good, there's a reason for why I am the way that I am.
Yeah, I totally that resonates with me a lot. And I do it. For me, it was the same. It was relief. I think her website is what I found first and went down that rabbit hole, which she'll take you to a couple of videos on Prime and definitely same puts the pieces together of the puzzle.
Absolutely. And so, would you say, as a highly sensitive person, because I think this is where I get a lot of questions from my pet parent clients in my animal communication practice, where people confuse anxiety or reactivity, regardless of species, with sensitivity. And when we started our chat today, you referenced that like there's this stigma, and especially for those of us who grew up in a certain era where it was more pronounced, it's like, oh, grow a thicker skin. Don't be so. And it's so interesting. Don't be so sensitive. And it's like, I wish I could turn that down, but could you speak a little bit? Because it sounds like you went through that as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So my sensitivity as a child, I've lovely parents with no patience. So it wasn't the easiest. It would be handled in a way like you're just tired. So that carried with me into adulthood, into misaligned relationships. Like this is the reason I'm just tired. To see that sensitivity as the flip side, it's not something I'm going to tone down. It's something I'm going to turn up because it will guide me. It's something I'm going to listen to and express because it's the direction my body is needing to go in. It's something I need to trust. And so it really allows that language to flip when you discover it's not easy for everybody, but for me, it really was like a light flip, just like done. That's it. Like this is who I am. And I have a sensitive nervous system and I am sensitive to energetic subtleties and nature and the elements. And I love that. And I'm not too tired. that when that comes up,
That's
there's something misaligned or something draining me, and it's something to listen to.
there is something in it. It's like it's not fatigue, but just like it's not necessarily anxiety, it can manifest that way if we don't know what we're looking at. It sounds like you're seeking them out almost like nature, like learning about the subtle energies. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about, of course, you had your aha moment or probably moments where you started
Hmm.
to realize, okay, how I was parented or how I was perceived as a child in groups, or even how I perceived myself for a time, that's not who I am. But now I know who I am. Now I need to set up my environment, my relationships, my life that play to my strength. And so it would be really helpful to, if you could share some of the ways that you do that, some of the things that you found helpful.
Once we're out here, the conditioning starts. Even while there may have been relationships that were misaligned, like that, I had enough sense to have a side life and be in that space through my yoga practice, through my studies in Ayurveda, and be in that lane as well. It actually made me reorient my business because I realized I was calling in highly sensitives already. So that was a pivot. And that it was like trying on that perfect shirt or sweatshirt, which is like, oh my gosh, this is the best fit ever.
Mhm.
So it did draw that change. And in regard to space and setting things up, because we had, recently not too far off gone through a pandemic, and I'd
Yes.
gone, yeah, I had gone through a divorce. I had gone through a very deep valley. I had leaned so heavily in my practices in Ayurveda and yoga and subtle energies and chakras to maintain a homeostasis within myself through all that, that I didn't have much to reorient. It honestly felt more like a magic wand. Like I'm doing this in alignment, and here's my wand to like make it sparkle a little more because I am sensitive, and this is why I'm choosing this. Whatever it may be, I think it just kind of gave me that permission slip that I needed because I already had, per my dose of life, my serving that I had gotten, switched so many things around to draw myself into the alignment that I knew I needed to heal through that. So it kind of just became, yeah, that kind of glitter sass that we all want in life. Just like, and that's why it
This is my special sauce. Well, I love that on your Instagram, by the way, please do go and check out Jane Marie. She is under the handle the HSP Way on Instagram. And it's fun because you add a dose of sparkle, you add a dose of glitter, and it's like a splash of special, reframing how we see our potential as highly sensitive people. If we have, let's say we want to listen to music, we could listen to it almost at 0, which is a very low volume. We can listen to it at 10. We have the whole range to choose from. And I know in my own life, it's become more about learning how to adjust the volume for different sensory inputs, for different relationships in my life, and learning that it's safe, healthy, and good for everyone for me to take the lead in that. If something is overwhelming, if it's too loud, if it's too bright, if it's too fragrant, if you will, if the energy of someone else that I'm keeping company with is a little too aggressive, maybe not be the right word, but just palpable, then
yes.
I can take the lead and I can adjust. Because when I don't do that, everyone tends to suffer, if not in the short term, then in the long term. And when I do that, what it looks like is a lot of behind the scenes, like what you're talking about, working with your subtle energy centers, working with Ayurveda, working to develop relationships with other highly sensitive souls who naturally self regulate and don't question it when you do.
Yeah. And I love that image of tuning. You might be in a busy place where it's not the space to speak up, but in the spaces where it is, it's like you can really allow that part of you to speak and advocate for the space, for the people, for whatever, for the animals, for whatever the given scenario is. So I love that.
For me, like behind the scenes means I kind of have a daily routine. I've learned that my highly sensitive, highly aware nervous system does thrive with some structure underneath it. We'll start out with a morning meditation, and I do some guided breath work and some visualizations. And you mentioned yoga. I'm a
Yeah.
fan as
Yes.
well because I need to move my body and not necessarily nothing against this, but I went with my mom to her gym a few weeks ago and there was some class going on and just the volume of music from outside the closed door, like I wanted to run out of the building. So just even understanding like what kinds of exercise work for us versus what might be overstimulating and just kind of
Yeah.
gravitating towards the stuff that feels good.
And just even like taking into account that like I think of chess players, right? And then they burn 5,000 plus calories a game or something. We're processing all the time, and exercise is important. Obviously, keeping your body well is important, but thinking of that exercise and outlet is as something you said of matching it to a place where your nervous system is going to appreciate and benefit. I same, absolute same.
And keeping hydrated. And I think you had a post on your Instagram even about snacking and about blood sugar. And it's like that sensitivity, that inner awareness. For me, I've found that it covers all the whole spectrum of life experiences. I'm highly aware when I'm hungry. I'm highly aware when I'm tired. I'm highly aware when I'm dehydrated or when I've sat for 10 hours.
Yeah, yeah, and honoring it and learning that, and same going through that experience of understanding how different you will feel when you have a night routine, when you have a day routine, when you make time to have that self-care ritual in place. It makes packing the snacks easier. It makes time for a walk mean more because you know the benefits. And I do think any non highly sensitive person would benefit from the same exact thing. But like you said, it's like we're the dog whistle, when people are fatigued to be like, yep, well, I brought snacks and I have enough to share, to be
Yeah.
that advocate for the body and the space and the energy.
Absolutely. So, speaking of pets, speaking of dog whistles, you are also a pet parent, Mama. You and I were chatting a little bit before I pressed record and talking about how you are discovering whether one of your dogs, one of your two dogs, may in fact also be highly sensitive. And so, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the temperament differences that you're observing. You haven't told me yet which one you suspect is highly
Yeah.
sensitive. So I'm waiting to hear as well.
Yeah, the unveiling.
Mhm.
This is the highly sensitive dog release right here that we're going to unveil. So I have
Right?
two pups. Yeah, both females. They're 4 years apart. The older one, of course, I had her 1 to 4, and there was no comparison. She was just my world then. And of course, I cared for her dearly. And it wasn't really until I understood highly sensitive was an aspect of beings that all of a sudden, not only did my life flash before my eyes, but her life flashed before my eyes. And when she was a babe getting shots, she had reactions. I had to rush her back. I had to navigate her anxiety in vets or in a doggy daycare and advocate for her in a very different way than I had dogs prior. They just had a different season of life. I adopted them both at about 1.5 years old, and they had their hardships in life before they found me. So our nurturing relationships just gave a different sort of life to both of them. And I didn't dabble in doggy daycares with them or anything. So this was very different for Batman and for me to advocate for her. But one thing that stood out, not just the sensitivity to the dosage of shots and vaccines, but if there was something on her you might draw attention to, you want to check your dog, it's at a bump or what is that? It was too much attention. It was too much focus on her, and she would shake. And she also didn't have a sense, she didn't have anyone to model how to reset her nervous system. So she didn't have a good dog shake either. And I, of course, some vets would prescribed gabapentin. I'm like, this dysphoria is horrible for her. Like, I'd never want to do this again. And prescribed painkiller because she had a tweaky kind of knee thing when she was a pup. Nothing I would ever want to give her per her response to the scenario, of just how she's behaving. So that's not what she's asking for. And I could tell, and really honoring that. So there's really specific, she was at a place that I'd never used before, but they had a cam. So I was like, okay, let's try this. And they had checked something in her mouth, and I saw night and day. I said, they did something to her, like something happened, and I don't know what it is. And so the next 4 hours of my life is just really sad, really sad for my dog in this situation I can't go and recover from because I'm somewhere else. So that those moments really, really make an impression on you. And I asked, and he said, oh, we looked at something. And I was like, well, that's exactly when she shut down. And if you're not there for your animal to help them reset their nervous system, and they don't know how to yet do it on their own, then I think a lot of people do. And I saw this from vets say that they have anxiety. You can put them on Prozac, X, Y, and Z. But for her, I mean, she's my baby, and I know getting her out on a trail without a leash, where she can just find freedom and be herself. She's great on the trail. If she hears something before I do, which it's probably usually common, they hear like what, 10,000 decibels higher than, or 10 decibels higher than us, they hear more than us. And like, she knows to look at me and listen. Like, she's just very in tune with that messaging and awareness and cautiousness. When she was younger, she'd always put her chin on the cushion first before asking to come up, she just sensitive to the space around her, asking for permission. And so, like I said, once I realized high sensitivity is in beings, of course, like that was like, this is Batman. And when I brought Avi into our life, her name's Abigail, she's just that vibrant life that she does get scared of things, and she's part Chihuahua mix. So I think she actually thinks she's smaller than she is sometimes, because she's actually 20 pounds. So she's not itty bitty, but she naturally had a good shakeout. She had a natural reset, and has taught since Batman to have that reaction more readily at hand for her. And so, and watching the difference between the two of them, Avi just does bounce back a lot quicker, and Bat, does better with both of us there. I think a lot of times she does great when it's just dogs. Like, she'd prefer all dogs in her life all the time. So I'm like, I can't.
You're like an honorary dog.
Exactly. I'm like, I do my best. Yeah, I hope that's not too long-winded, but just really.
Not at all. And in fact, it really intrigues me when you're talking about the shakeout. This is something that I talk with my pet parent clients a lot about. It is very important for all beings, not just dogs, not just non-human animals. But I'd love for you to explain a little bit more about what you're seeing for anybody that doesn't know what you're looking for in terms of a nervous system reset in dogs.
Yeah. It's that, right when you bathe your dog and they want to shake their coat out and get you wet. It's that same action, but you want to look for their lips nice and loose. You want to see their teeth and their gums as they do it. Their ears are all relaxed, and it's really from tail to toe. I mean, nose to tail, the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. And you'll notice it after they have a bit of a run around with another dog. You'll notice it in any kind of situation, that when you start to notice it, you get an insight into their nervous system and into, okay, that was too much, and how can I do that differently? Or, how can I coach you through that moment differently and be there for you? It's just really important. I'm sure all your listeners see those humans, but the leashes, and they use the leash to talk when you don't need to use the leash to talk, and you can communicate in different ways with your animals. Watching that shakeout is that communication that not only are they giving to their body, but they're giving to you.
It's so interesting that you highlight that too. And I really love it, because it's something that I had to learn how to do from watching animals. I was at a park somewhere and this hawk flew in and it grabbed hold of a dove. There I am, kind of like wanting to go interfere with nature yet again. Well, I didn't even need to because that crafty little dove figured out how to get away somehow from the hawk. And I watched what happened next as she just landed on the ground and did exactly what you just described from tip to tail. She just shook her whole body and she just shook it off. And then it was like
Yeah.
she kind of gathered her consciousness, kind of gathered her awareness again. For those of you who are watching the video version, you can see an example of me doing it. Really fun. And she just kind of was like, okay, on with the rest of my day. And what's so vitally important about this, and if you are suffering from any kind of lingering anxiety or trauma in your past, whether it's due to being a highly sensitive person or not, you could give this a try because you literally activate your lymphatic system, because moving the body is the only way we can activate our lymphatic system, which is the shadow side of the cardiovascular system. So you just move your body, and that lets your lymphatic system know that it needs to get started moving cortisol out of the body. Cortisol is the stress hormone that can build up to toxic levels. And you just reset yourself. You're like, okay, that's over now. I don't need to carry it with me for the rest of my day, for the rest of my life. And it's the part that we human animals, since we spend so much time up in our heads, we tend to forget that we need
Yeah.
to do this because we've kind of left the greater food chain of life. We have these artificial lives and these artificial environments. And in a way, we can kind of afford to hold on to our traumas. Like that dove, if she got stuck and, oh my God, I was almost eaten for lunch and she was still ruminating about that at dinner, she wouldn't make it to breakfast the next morning. You have to shake that stuff off and come back to what's happening right now. Or you're going to end up, if you weren't hawk lunch, you're going to be hawk dinner because you're going to be distracted. You're not going to be in the present moment. You're not going to be aware. This is so important. And I feel like many of our animal companions, because we're their primary mirrors and models and companions, they don't remember how to do this. And that's where we can bring in some of these other tools. Dog yoga. I've done goat yoga. It's wonderful. Highly recommend
Yeah.
it. EFT tapping and other tools. I'm a Reiki master. We can move it through with energy, but helping our animals to get back in their bodies, to remember how it's all already wired to work, how it's supposed to work, and tune into their own instincts. It's like, it's okay to just shake your body. It's beneficial. It's necessary.
Yeah, I love that description, and adjusting to get that cortisol to shift. You're not releasing it anymore. You're fleshing it out. It's brilliant point that you're making. And it's been interesting watching her with two now in the house, right? She her lead, it's allowed her to step into that leadership role, and it's allowed her to step into a different space with confidence. Not to say if I took her to the vet that she's like fearless, right?
Right.
But to in our own private life, in our own spaces, I've seen her be able to have that mirror neuron experience with a like creature. That's really been able to shift, between like healthy walks, definitely freedom. Like she just revels. She'll refuse a walk, but if I take her to a park where she can be free, she'll embrace it, and she needs her own expression. And it makes such a difference for her.
Absolutely. And really honoring that, because just like our energy tends to change and shift depending on how those other individuals in our life see us. As a child growing up, I have a softer voice and I'm an introvert on top of being a highly sensitive individual. And so I didn't gravitate to being at the front of the line, at the head of the class, to raising my hand and doing all kinds of things that some of my less sensitive, more extroverted peers really enjoyed. That those weren't things I really enjoyed. And so I grew up with kind of an awareness of myself that wasn't formed from the inside out. I didn't really know who I was. I just knew that I wasn't meeting other people's expectations. And that created the energy of what was coming to me from the people I was surrounded with, my teachers, my peers, my friends. We can feel that even if nothing is said. And I believe that our animals, in fact, I've experienced it many, many times, that our animals have the same abilities amplified. We don't have to say to them, oh, why are you behaving like you're anxious again? Or why do you have to be such a diva about everything, or whatever might have been said to us as we were growing up. We just think it, and that creates an emotion. And then our animals receive that emotional frequency and they tend to fold into themselves even more. And so just being able to look at our animals and just say, I see you for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I love you exactly the way that you are. And I
Yeah.
honor you for exactly the way that you are. And I learn from you exactly the way that you are. And I trust that you and I are supposed to be together. And I am open to anything that you want to teach me about what you need from me, how I can set up your world so that you feel safe and at ease and confident and known and respected and loved for who you are.
Yeah. And honor it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's a gem. I mean, they all are.
Yeah.
But she is definitely like, she reminds you it's bedtime. She reminds, she doesn't love highway sound. So she doesn't matter if it's like a huge car ride or a short car ride, like taking breaks, and grounding. She is a big grounder. That's another, I think, big qualifier for her is once she gets out of the car or out of the house into the yard, she grounds, she rolls on that earth, and she can't get enough. And like you said, just being in the know of openness and curiosity and respect to them. And just like you said before, if there's a fragrance that's too strong or a sound that's too loud, the way she honors her nervous system and tells me what she needs is the reminder that I need.
Yeah, that's really critical to really recognize that. And so many of us, I've discovered that when we are highly sensitive and when we are aware, other highly sensitive beings will naturally find their way into our world
Yeah.
because we can see them and we allow them to be exactly the way that they are, and we learn from them. We find our way through the world together. And in fact, I love that you have a group, a meetup group for highly sensitives in Asheville. That sounds like something really fun to do. So I would love it if you could share a little bit more with our listeners about how they can reach out to you, about your local and your online offerings, ways that they can work with you, especially if people are listening and they have questions about, well, I'm not sure I am highly sensitive, or I feel like I'm highly sensitive and I'm not really sure what I need to do
Yeah.
in order to act on that and make some changes or some adjustments in my world to play to
Yeah.
my strengths.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's perfectly worded. And so you first asked about the meetup, which everyone's invited because I do virtual meetups as well, virtual book clubs. So the next book we are going to do is the book, The Highly Sensitive Person. So that is on Meetup. It's a platform, if you're not familiar with it, where you can search different kind of groups and outlets. And this one is called the HSPs of AVL, which is Asheville.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, thank you. I would say a fair amount of members do realize exactly what you're saying. Like, I know I'm highly sensitive. Now, what do I do? How can I use this to play to my strengths? You come to that knowing once there's been a pretty big speed bump in your life, and it sends you down that rabbit hole to understand what is going on, and it will lead you to understanding this part of yourself. And so as the life coach for highly sensitive people, that's really where I show my strengths in supporting other highly sensitive people to navigate back to trusting their intuition and back to trusting themselves. I always say we live in a do-it-yourself culture.
That's
And
true.
to what extent are you going to keep going down that path? Like we also say it takes a village. And that is why I'm such an advocate for getting support, whether it's a therapist, a meetup group, a coach, but finding a place where you feel that support so you can grow. It takes a lot to just nurture your seed. You're not the only one creating the garden. You have the soil and the water and the sun and the insects and the chickens. Like it's a whole loop, So
Very
it's
true.
like, yeah, jump in this loop. And that's basically a space, especially like post divorce, career change, or feeling that you feel that resistance, but you're ready to level up, to grow, you're ready to expand. But moving through all the years of not understanding this part of you really helps to get support to open that door even wider and let the light fully in. So, as you said, I am on Instagram at the HSP Way, and my website is thisisjanemarie.com. It's pretty easy, but those are places to just learn more about me. But I mean, don't be a stranger, just send a DM. It's to break down these electric barriers we create.
Right.
It's like it's great that I've been able to connect with Shannon. We just connected through Instagram and Facebook, and like, look, here we are. You never know.
Exactly.
Yeah, you never know.
Exactly.
Just say hey.
Absolutely. And just spend a little time and see what resonates. And if you find yourself getting drawn in at deeper levels, just understand that there's something calling to you. I don't have to have all the data. I don't have to go through the MRI machine to
Mm-hmm.
be able to share a printout with somebody. I don't have to prove to anyone else that the highly sensitive personality trait, the genetic trait that applies to me, that feels like a fit for me. I can just become more aware of what I prefer and how I respond to life and situations. And I can make up my own mind, gut mind, heart mind, as well as head mind about who I
Mm-hmm.
am and how I want to be in the world.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so if something about today's conversation is drawing you to research a little bit further, to explore a little bit more deeply, then welcome to the club. welcome, welcome to the highly sensitive world. And I will
Yes.
also post some links in the show notes for how to reach out to Jane Marie and also how to access. I have a free highly sensitive pet help guide that you can access to guide you to explore this a little bit more deeply with your companion animals. Just like humans, no, the scientists have not gotten around to survey every single species on the planet, but with 100 and counting, you can bet that there are more. I have parented highly sensitive parrots and turtles and canines, and there's a reason why. And there's a reason why you're together, whether it's so that you can take a walk in your pet's paws or claws or fins or feathers and try on a different way of life for size, or whether it's because your pet is calling you to own who you are a little more deeply and express yourself fully and not hold back and not hide aspects of yourself just because in the past maybe somebody somewhere has let you know that that wasn't okay with them. It's time to
Mm-hmm.
be more than okay with all of who you are. Jane Marie, thank you again for being with us, HSP coach and potentially a highly sensitive pet parent. Of course, you can find us every 2 weeks. We release a fresh new episode of Let's Talk to Animals. You can find us at letstalktoanimals.buzzsprout.com or at letstalktoanimals.com/podcast or everywhere that streaming services are available. Also over on YouTube if you want to watch me act out the podcast on the video version. And we are so grateful for your time and attention. Let me know what topics you'd like to hear about next. Let me know what you thought of today's episode and what questions you have, and we can address it on a future podcast episode. And of course, like, subscribe, share. It helps our little podcast work its way up the ladder, the podcastosphere ladder. And so we can reach more folks who are interested in what we have to offer. And I'm sending you all my love. I'll see you back in 2 weeks. Bye.